Morning, everybody. I'm Amanda Phillips. I am the director of the Woodlawn Pope-Leighey House in Alexandria, Virginia. And we are a growing, dynamic, historic site, and we love to use artists and makers to help us tell our stories. So today, of course, I'm not at the site. I'm working at home, having my tea, and I'm about to have a great conversation with my friend and colleague, Renee Comet. Renee is a food photographer who's been working in that particular career for almost her entire life. And she is one of the most preeminent food photographers around here and across the country. You see her photographs on many publication covers and newspapers. She has worked for corporations making photographs for products, and her most recent project is making beautiful flower photographs for the U.S. Post Office for their Forever stamp. So we're very excited about that. But today we're talking about a whole new line of wonderful tableware, tea towels and aprons as part of Renee's new venture called Comet Cloth. So we are really, really excited to have you. Thank you for being with us today.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
And we're really, really happy to have you. One of the things that really stood out for me right away is something that you put on your website, which is you've been doing food photography for many, many years now. And any of the people who are checking in today, if they look at your site, reneecometphoto.com, they will find incredible work. But obviously taking a photograph and having a photograph that someone might reprint and put in their home is very different than making something that's tactile that someone holds in their hand and has to use potentially. So what made you decide that you might like to transition from the visual art to sort of a handmade or crafted item that someone's going to use potentially every day in their kitchen?
Well, the idea came when I was on vacation and not in the trenches of working all the time. But I consider making a food photograph as a handmade thing because you're using your hands. But after you make it, it's on a package, it's a stamp, it doesn't do anything for you anymore. So it just seemed like a natural blend to have the food photographs on something useful and that you could use in your kitchen. So that's sort of how it evolved, and it got to percolate for many, many years because it took a while to get it going.
Yeah, of course, I can imagine that. So you've got a great apron on. I can't see close enough to see what's on that apron. I think it might be clementine oranges or something.
No, they're little sun glow.
Little sun gold tomatoes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Tomatoes.
So that's sort of a version. That's one of the pieces in your line. But talk a little bit about when you take a food photograph and perhaps you're transferring that photograph into some sort of commercial or print or online campaign even. Or we've seen some of your work on packets in the grocery store. What's the difference when you're creating a photograph for someone to see in that way and then to have on something that they're wearing?
There are some limitations because you're printing on cloth that's not flat and there's bubbles and nibs and everything. And then there's also, I'm working with a natural fiber. I'm working with cotton. Reproducing on polyester is a lot cleaner, but that wouldn't work in the kitchen. It's not. And then there's some color limitations. I've been trying to do an orange, a series of oranges for a friend of mine, and they just don't reproduce on this cotton.
So do you think, there's a lot of talk in the field about artist versus maker. You're clearly a very renowned photographic artist. You've been doing that for a very long time in all kinds of different media. But do you think of yourself now perhaps more as a maker as well? Or did the lines stay blurred for you?
I always thought of myself as a maker, honestly, and I think it's because what I do is so much hands-on, and yeah.
And what about, one of the things you say on your website, which I really love, is that you talk about food and sort of everything around food, the gathering of people, having conversations, sitting at a big table, that's obviously a connective experience. And you were using, which I loved, because at Woodlawn especially, we have our needlework show every year, and we talk a lot about embroidery at thread, certainly over the winter time. And you talk about how in this work, the thread, the fabric, that sort of feeling of the textile, the idea that thread also joins people. What made you make that connection? What in particular, was there something in particular that sort of you had this aha thing, or was it just organic?
It was probably more organic, but I think that food is just such a large part of my life, and connecting my family, and my kids have grown, and they've grown up to cook, and on Sundays a lot of times now we're FaceTiming as my daughter's cooking for the week, and it's exactly what we did.
I think, I'm particularly interested in things that are beautiful and useful at the same time, which I, one of the reasons that your work appeals to me. I said to you earlier that I was going to have you show off my favorite towel. So do you want to show off some for a minute?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I have it here.
Okay.
Now I have to see if I can pull it back so you can see it.
So that's my favorite, everybody who's watching. That's Renee's eggplant tea towel. And what I love about it is it's hard actually to see a little bit on the computer. It's harder to see the saturated colors. I mean, these pieces are really works of art, which makes sense since they are made by a photographer. And I think what's interesting about this piece, is that it's not necessarily what you would typically use in your kitchen as a kitchen towel. And I think we've had such a wonderful response to it in our own gift shop, but it is truly beautiful. What made you think, well, I'll do still life photographs as part of this line? Or again, was it just that you set it up and said, yeah, this is gonna work? Was this an early one, a late one?
This was an earlyish one. They're fairy tale eggplants, and they came from my local farmer's market. A lot of times I try to, when I'm shooting, I try to take it a step further I call it like yummifying the photograph. But what I know with eggplant, they don't really look that good cooked. So
That's true.
So I just love the rich colors. And, I bought it at the farmer's market. And then as I was coming into the studio, I thought, what color backgrounds would work? What would pop? And I don't know where the turquoise came from, but I put it down. I'm like, yes, this is it. And, and just, I don't pay attention to composition. I just kind of lay it out. And if my eyes flow, and doesn't get stuck anywhere, it works for me. And then I don't know if you can see the parsley.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Okay, I thought it needed just another like softer, flowy element to it. And I had this parsley that had gone to flowers.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Because I grow pots here at the studio on the outside on the porch, and I just added that. So just it came together. And
so I think your point about going to the farmer's market, and which I think we're both pretty fond of, and how has the quarantine? So your typical week might include a lot of that because of what you do for the other work that you do, as well as creating these goods. How do you think is the quarantine changing that routine, and how has being kind of in our new restrictive lives affected you and your work generally, whether it be your photography or the making?
Well, the shooting for Comet cloth is very, I do it alone and I listen to music, and it's a
Mhm,
different way of working than for
mhm,
commercial
mhm.
work. And I just kind of get in the zone, and I really enjoy that.
Mhm.
I have to say I don't necessarily enjoy it all the time now that I am doing it all the time. And I have some
Does
connections.
anybody?
Right. I have some connections with some farmers. So I've been talking to them, although we have not connected. Um, so I hope to get some ingredients from them. And I have my garden going, although it's not radishes I have right now. It's definitely slowing things down, and my
Mhm.
printers, they're not working, so it's hard to get my tests, what I shoot now, it's hard to get tests done. So
Yeah.
everything's been delayed.
So you've been impacted in that way. And we talked a little earlier about the fact that when you're shooting something that people are going to see visually, and you're creating something that people have to sort of, use on a hopefully on a daily basis, you're
Uh-huh.
having to think about things that you don't have to think about with your photographs. Like, is this cloth actually going to pick up the water, or is it going to be able to be used in the way that it was meant to? Is an apron going to protect me when I'm cooking? Does it wear well? What happens when it goes in the machine, and in the dryer? So has that been a big kind of part of this learning experience for you, having to think about the customer end of it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you'd hate to have, it's like a dip, something you eat, something that looks really pretty and delicious, and then you go to eat it, it doesn't taste good.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
I mean, these are vibrant, and I wanted them to remain vibrant and not fade. I originally thought I was going to print on linen, and it
Hmm.
didn't take the ink, so it just kind of faded away. And I did a lot of testing with the cotton. One of these things, uh, they need to be washed quite a bit so they soften up.
Hmm.
They're
Hmm.
quite stiff, and I think it's the process of the inks and everything. But they are absorbent. We did a lot of testing, and I had a lot of my friends that cook, wear the aprons, and pockets need to
Test
be,
that out.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I did spend a fair amount of time, and
Yeah.
it's I only have a couple things. I have an apron, and now I have child's aprons, but and towels. So I wanted to make sure they worked.
And are you thinking about branching out at all, or are you going to stick with those for a little while longer at this point?
I am, and I'm thinking about different fabrics.
Hmm.
Behind me,
Hmm.
flowers.
Hmm.
It's not food,
Beautiful.
but it's similar to food, flowers.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking of some home goods. Um,
Oh, that's great.
yeah.
So you and I chatted for a minute this morning, and you mentioned to me something I didn't know about you, even though I feel like I've known you for a really long time. But I did not know that you started life as a nurse. And you told me that you took this photography class that basically changed your life. So if you were mentoring a young maker now, what piece of advice do you think you might like to pass on to that person?
If somebody, what I would say to do, uh, people always people are always surprised that I come in and I just shoot, whether I'm going to
Mhm.
use it or not. And so if somebody has an idea, I think they should just practice. It's called practice, because
Mhm.
when it's like an instrument, when you do that, things evolve. You start to get a particular style for yourself, and I think that's one of the most important things. And also, don't hold back. If you have an idea, follow through with it.
Yeah, those are good pieces of advice. So thanks, Renee. We really appreciate it. We want everybody to know that they can also tune in tomorrow, Sunday, to check out a little bit more about your process and your studio at home while you're working at home. We're delighted that you are our first in the series we're doing.